What do you believe right now that's making you feel this way? And when you analyse it, you realise how irrational you can be at times.
Every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
It's not sales per se, but the outcome of it is, because people get to know you, they get to see you.
But, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development program I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated. Yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times, and only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews, and also through working with hundreds of owner managers over the last 10 years or so, into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer, or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk. Welcome to this episode of ScaleUp Radio, where I'm joined by Doran, who is the CEO of 22 Impact, and we explore his fascinating world of global talent management and marketing. We discuss the origins of the business, how he set it up now with different divisions, how it's become global. We look at his key revenue streams and the change over time, focusing more on luxury clients. And we discover some of the secrets behind Freedom's and 22 Impact's success, and his journey with cancer, and his passion now for helping young entrepreneurs. Tune in, listen in to the rest of this episode as we share some of the key milestones, some of his key challenges and strategies for scaling the business. And I don't think you can fail to be inspired by Freedom's insights, not only on the modeling industry, but his leadership and his customer acquisition and some of the things that he's achieved in a relatively short period of time. He's still only 21 years old. So do listen in and join us for this really captivating episode of ScaleUp Radio. Welcome to another episode of ScaleUp Radio. I'm delighted to be joined today by Doran of 22 Impact. So welcome to ScaleUp Radio.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Ah, pleasure. So 22 Impact, what's that all about? What do you guys do?
So 22 Impact is a global talent management, model management, public relations, brand marketing, advertising, and event production agency. So they're all under separate divisions. It gets a little bit hectic. But yeah, they all act under the same umbrella of the same company, but they are very different.
Okay, and what makes you different then from other companies that might be offering something ostensibly similar to you?
Each division has its own separate kind of differences, but I guess as a whole, we really cherry pick who we work with. We work 360, so we'll provide a lot of services outside of the normal services that other agencies would offer. And we generally tend to cater at least our more proactive divisions towards a more luxury sector or well-established sector. We don't really work with startups anymore, which is great. But yeah, we generally have a kind of a nice clientele, and we work around the clock. We work globally, and so clients love that they can come to us. We offer a range of services, even just within the divisions, but across multiple divisions, and it's also global, so they can work with us across different territories, which is great.
So when did you start the business?
In business as a whole, when I was 9. So yeah, I had,
Right.
I had my first side hustle when I was 9. So I would basically take scooter parts from eBay and I would spray paint them. I would fix them if they needed fixing, and I would then sell them as the part on its own, but restored, or I would make a full scooter that was functional.
We're talking about a motor scooter here, are we? Yeah.
Just a pedal,
pedal
scooter. Pedal scooter. Yeah. So I was obviously 9. I used to go to the skate park with my friends.
Yeah, of course, 9.
So it just kind of came out at that point. So that was my first in business. But it wasn't too serious at that point. But then it got a lot serious later down the line.
So when did you start 22 Impact?
22 Impact started in May of 2020. So splat bang in the middle of the pandemic, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've been going just over 3 years now, which is wild.
So 3 years, and you're describing yourself as global and 24 hours with division. So how can you give us a proxy for how big the business is?
Yeah, so right now in terms of core staff, we have about 32. They operate across, as I said, different divisions, and different divisions are at different stages. So our talent and model management are definitely way ahead of the rest of them. And yeah, we mainly focus on the UK, the US, and parts of Asia, in particular Bangkok, Singapore, and Bali. And then the US and UK are our main territories.
How does the business model work? How do you make your money? How does the money flow?
So I guess you have to take it per division because they're a little bit different. But talent management is we just take a commission from any brand deals that are made is the core part of it. There's other things that can happen, but the core part is, say Adidas want to work with us, they will offer 10,000 as an example. We take between 20 and 30% of that. So for that division, we would make between 2,000 and 3,000. Again, very similar with the modeling industry. We take a standard 20% cut on all model jobs. Same thing. Then on the PR side of things, it's generally a retainer. So we have companies that will give us a set amount per month and we do what's required within that month. Or it might be more of a one-off situation where they have a campaign launching or whatever the situation is, and we would price kind of per job as such. That's the PR side of things. The event production, very one-off, depends what the event is, the scale of it, all those different types of things. That's a one-off charge. And then our brand marketing advertising is generally a cut of the overall budget. So say, for example, they're putting in 20,000 to advertising, we would generally take a 20% cut of whatever budget is that they're using. So be 20,000 budget, and then 4,000 would be our fee.
Yeah, and with those divisions, you mentioned that the talent and the model part of it is maybe the most advanced. Does that mean it's the lion's share of the overall income? Yeah,
pretty much. And the reason isn't because there's problems or anything like that. It's purely because the PR, the event production, and brand marketing have all just been private behind the doors type situation. So with clients that are already existing with us, and we then offered those services privately. They haven't been advertised anywhere. They're not on any websites, but that is changing as of August. So then we'll start to see, those divisions increase in popularity because it's obviously out there, and we're doing more to push it.
Well, up until now, you've led with the talent and model services, and then with those clients, you've then done other work with them as they have been. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, very good. And yeah, it sounds like your ideal customer then has changed a little bit over the time, and now you're working with the bigger brands.
Definitely. Yeah. When you start, you can't go in there and, work with the top dog straight away. But thankfully, in the past 6 months, I would say we've seen quite a big difference in the clients that we work with. And that was part of a change that we made about a year ago to narrow it down and focus on specific types of clients. Because we started off with a certain amount, and their budgets are always quite low, and they match the type of people that at the time we represented. And we basically slashed a lot of our talent from our roster because we just felt we weren't a good fit anymore. And it just wasn't moving in the direction that we wanted with those people. And so since doing that, we have seen quite a good increase in in the clients and the amount of time that we have available to give the support to who we need to give it to, which is great.
Very good. And what are some of the overall trends that are going on then in your world? What's happening? Where's the market going?
It's a bit of there's been a lot of switches recently. I guess in the pandemic was an incredible time for this industry because no companies, no brands were really doing out of home advertising because nobody was outside. So all the budget for events was stripped. All of the billboard budgets, no one was really putting much into them. There was no activations happening. Any advertising budget that they had to do with anything outside of a home was pretty much stripped down to 5-10%. So then what happened as a result of that is everything got pushed online. So all those budgets that weren't then being used got moved into the influencer space primarily, but also everything into the digital kind of growth of the company, be it ads, et cetera, et cetera. So at the point that 22 Impact came, we're obviously in the middle of this change that has happened. And so it was a great time. And then recently now, you kind of see that brands pull back their budgets a little bit. There's fears of recessions happening, and there's obviously a lot of layoffs happening, and there's definitely a lot more financial concern, but I think that's in every industry. But on the whole, it is pretty steady. Online influencing is still one of the major drivers of sales for brands today, especially now that they've utilized it. I think the popularity of TikTok has had a massive impact in keeping those budgets there as well. So that's been great. And then a lot of the budgets within the talent industry, at least, are generally reserved for the last 3 months of the year because you have a lot of seasonal events. You've got Halloween, you've got Christmas, you've got New Year's, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So there's a lot of marketing and just a lot of activity happening in general. People, know that they have to spend money in that time and they kind of save up their money as well. So generally within the marketing industry, you'll see the last 3-4 months of the year have quite an increase in budgets. But overall, it's pretty steady right now.
Okay. And so how does that impact you as a business? Do you need to be able to staff up at those times, or is the steadiness okay, basically within between? How does that impact you?
I think generally for any other agency, they would probably be pretty steady throughout the year up until the last 3-4 months. As I said, it gets a little bit crazy. But for us, we're also scaling at the same time as all these changes are happening. And so our kind of scaling phase has been in preparation since January. It's quite a lot that's gone into it, and it will be starting from August in terms of all the things that we're doing and kind of new activations that we're putting forward. So yeah, in general, we have been scaling up a little bit, but that is outside of what the industry is doing. That's the general thing. We have, not gone too overboard with it because of the current financial situations, and still making sure that we're not going to overdo ourselves and see how it goes and grow a little bit once we've fully kind of implemented the scaling. But as of right now, we have grown quite a lot as well as it is.
Yeah, I mean, you've obviously had. We'll go back in a minute and look at some of the key milestones. But what do you think has been a key factor in your success so far? Because in 3 years, you've grown to 32 staff, and you've got people working clients in different countries. And so what do you think you attribute some of that success to?
I think how quick we adapt is a big thing. And how many changes are constantly happening. I think a lot of people stay very stagnant in what they do, the services they offer, the staff they have, the amount of outreach they do, the amount they put into marketing. It stays very samey for quite a while. And I think the difference, especially on our part and what's grown so much, is we're constantly innovating with new softwares. We're bringing in new staff that are needed. We're dropping anyone that we don't see having a good return on investment. And generally, we just move quite fast with things. And because of that, it means that we can obviously see the results of it, and we can implement things quickly. We can take things away quite quickly. And I think just having that flexibility, especially in today's world, it means we can move a lot quicker. Generally, the bigger a company gets, or the more stagnant a company is, then you'll see that process gets lengthier and lengthier, and changes aren't as quick, and then there's kind of effects from that point. So yeah, I think that being able to change very quickly, adapt to new things very quickly, realize, okay, you know what, this hasn't gone quite right, strip it all back, let's do it again. And that process could happen, 3 times within 2 months or something like that. The other times it could be very long. So I think just having the flexibility and the insight, networking, seeing what's going on in the industry, just kind of having everything everywhere all at once.
So how do you manage that? Because that's that's an art for a company to have its finger on the pulse for a start, to actually, as you just said, to know what's going on, to be able to spot things early, and then secondly, to be able to have the internal mechanisms to be able to respond to that in a proper way. How do you actually manage that in your business?
That's what has been a big part of this new scaling phase too, is I think sometimes people can underestimate the importance of software and the importance of that software aiding staff, but also having the right staff at the same time. So basically, I would say having the right staff and having the right tech stack is super, super important, and continually developing those and changing those and upgrading those is how we make it work. If it weren't for the tech stack that we have and how we implement them and how we train our staff initially as well to use those, it would be a very, very different story, and things would take much longer.
Yeah. And how do you, so within your 32 people, what are the sort of the typical roles? What's the structure of the business?
Typical roles are assistants. We have a few assistants. I have an assistant just personally for me to manage the chaos every day. And then we have some kind of like tech assistants and like model assistants if it's kind of organizational admin work. Then there's a lot of model bookers, model agents, and talent agents as well. So they manage either the model or the talent personally. That's everything to do with what they may need, if it's strategy, if it's portfolio updates, if it's brand deals, if it's events, whatever it is, they handle all of that. So that takes up a big chunk, as there are 2 biggest divisions as well. Then we have an event producer, graphic designers, social media managers, and then some freelancers as well that we bring in as and when needed, like contracted freelancers. They help really well as well. If say they're not needed all day every day, they're not needed full time, or maybe sometimes not even part-time. So they make up the majority. It's mainly agents and bookers really.
And how many of those 32 end up reporting to you?
Probably about 7.
So you got 7 direct.
7. There is, in the talent management and in model management, there are key managers, so that I don't have to speak to everybody all the time. Otherwise, I would never be able to handle that. That would be a lot. So if there's ever any, like your day-to-day questions, and I think that's something that also helped us grow a lot, was as once I started removing myself from the day-to-day, things started to get a lot easier. But it's very, very hard as an owner to do the navigation and give that up and know that it's going to be done right. And I think it's not always about it being done right the first time around. It is going to take some training, and there's going to be some trial and error with it. But I've learned to kind of take my hands off the wheel a little bit with the day-to-day, and it's been a phenomenal move.
Okay, and how have you done it? Because you're absolutely right. It's one of the toughest transitions for us as business owners to make, especially if we have literally started the business on our own.
Yeah.
So, what tips have you got for people? What things have you got right or got wrong, perhaps that you've learned from delegating, essentially?
Definitely, what I got right was, well, right and wrong is on the hiring front. I read something a while ago, and it was hire right, fire fast. That might not have been the exact terminology, but something in the sense of, you can only hire what you think is right until they're in the job. There's only so much you can do before you've hired them. So now there's a lot of checks that I go in place, see, okay, have they worked in the relevant areas? I'm not hiring them because they've had one piece of experience from somewhere, or it's not based off of looks or locations or anything like that. Is the primary core of it is their experience, and in our job the communication is big as well. We also introduce testing as a way to kind of help with that. Instead of going fully off a CV, there's like a few different tests that we do to see, okay, we think they would work in this role.
Okay.
Obviously it doesn't always work. There's some people that join and it's not a fit. They're not as qualified in what they said they were, or they're just not taking the training on board properly. There's personal issues, whatever it is. And so I think it's also very important to fire fast, because it's just wasted money at that point. They're not, going to do too much. They've gone through all the training, they've gone through everything that you need. So by that point, there's a certain level of competence that should be there. And if you see that it's not there, why would you then think it's going to kind of increase over time, or give the money to train them, essentially? So that was one thing that helped a lot. Yeah. I think the other thing that helps in delegating is training. We have some really great training softwares and knowledge-based softwares. That means if there's kind of your common issues, how do I do this? How do I do that? They don't always have to come to you. It's in a knowledge base where pretty much every aspect of your company is covered. Any questions that they might have that aren't specific to, a campaign you're working on, or a specific job you're doing, should be answered in there. That helps take up a lot of time, a lot of questions. And then just kind of the hierarchy as well. As I said, obviously this wouldn't be in place for people at the start of their journey, but later down the line, once, you have a little bit of spare cash, or you're looking to kind of increase your headcount, then you can implement managers in a sense where they have a whole structure of people underneath them, and they know, they're very experienced, they know what they're doing. They can take off a lot of that day-to-day or constant messaging from you, and just anything that's really important gets through to you, or it comes in a report, and it's all pretty good from that sense. I think there would be three main things. Yeah, but it doesn't come easy. It's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of things going wrong. It's going to be different for every single entrepreneur. There's a lot of factors that go into it that make it very different to everyone else. But definitely doing that as well. If you're in a position where you can't hire, full-time staff or part-time staff, use Upwork, use Fiverr, see if there's any external arrangements you can make, offer things to people, even if you think they're not going to accept it. There's ways around things at a startup phase where you can make things work. Again, there's probably softwares that can help you not in place fully of a person, but if there's one aspect you need, there's probably a software out there that could help you at a cheaper cost as well. Yeah, all those things have really helped with delegation.
Yeah, excellent. So what does a typical week look like, if there is such a thing for you?
Yeah, I wish there was. It's very all over the place. I mean, especially there's seasons in this industry, such as fashion weeks, and there's award shows, and a lot of it can get very chaotic during that time. So June Fashion Week just passed, and so that consisted of me being in Spain for 3 days. I was shooting a campaign, so I needed to be there for that, and then I had to fly straight to Paris to be with one of our talents for Fashion Week. and then straight to London for some meetings. So that is 1 week. Then the next week, this week, I'm home all week. I'm working from home. I'm not going anywhere. It's pretty much meetings all day, calls all day on a Monday and a Tuesday. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is more kind of just general admin work or expansions on things, emails. It's just a lot of emails, meetings, calls, traveling. But no week is ever the same, unfortunately. It would make my life a lot easier if it was.
Well, and I think you've got a couple of other roles, haven't you, outside the business? I think you're an ambassador, aren't you, with the Alder Hey Children's Hospital, and I think you said you've just taken on another role with the Princess Diana Awards, or the trust there.
With Alder Hey, I had cancer when I was 15, which is, wow, I was very young. So I didn't really know about it. I've kind of felt that my lower stomach was a little bit weird after I'd had a fall, and I decided to go to the GP about it. And the next day he booked me in at Alder Hey to have an ultrasound and x-rays and all of that. And then I was diagnosed later that day. So it was very, very quick. Imagine going to the GP the day before.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, you should get a referral. And the day after, you're told you have this, life-threatening disease. And at the time I was 15, so I was still in school. And then pretty much, I think that may have been a Wednesday or a Thursday, something like that. They said that I'd be starting treatment on the Monday the following week. So I had about 3 days to kind of sort myself out, tell my school, by the way, I'm not going to be in school for a while. And then, I did 3 months of very intense chemotherapy, and then another 3 months of still intense, but not as bad. And it was more kind of, you go in for a day, have an injection, whereas the first time was you're in hospital for 5-6 days in a bed, you can't move type thing. So that was 6 months, and then thankfully the amazing people that they are in a NHS and Alder Hey looked after me very well. I was cleared, I rang the bell, and then I was like, you know what, I can do a lot kind of for Alder Hey. I saw the amount of stuff that they do there, and I just found it insanely, blows my mind the amount that they do. So I was like, if there's anything I could help, and I kind of mentioned to it, and then I became a young person and business ambassador for the hospital and the charity, but more so the charity. So I help out wherever I can, if it's visits of VIPs to the hospital to make kids better, or if there's a sponsorship that wants to donate some things, or they're having an event. We have like a lot of golf events for fundraising, things like that. So we'll get some people in to help with that or sponsor that. It's a lot of odd things here and there. We also helped with when the war was going on between Russia and Ukraine. There was a lot of Ukrainian kids that were currently undergoing chemotherapy. Obviously, they couldn't continue their treatment. So Alder Hey were one of the hospitals that brought some kids over to help continue their treatment there, which was
very good.
Yeah, it was so great to be involved in that whole process happening. And then now I recently just came on with the Diana Awards, which is late Princess Diana's charity that was kind of founded in her honor to help with young people in business and with bullying and things like that. And I really like to kind of share in any way I can to help people that are younger than me, that didn't really have people my age to look up to. Whenever you look in business, there's always people that are 40, 50, whatever it is. So it's great to be involved with them. But that's very recent. That was from yesterday, from a few days ago.
Very good. Well, no, that's excellent. And that must have been, I can only imagine what that must have been like at 15 and have to go through that. How do you think that's affected you with what you've done since and how you are? It must have impacted you, I'm sure, in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, I think a big one for me was with time. My whole concept of time just completely changed because and in some aspects it was very good. In a lot of aspects, as I've got older, I've learned it wasn't so great. But I kind of always felt that everything had to be done straight away. And I lost a lot of patience, because even though I know that, I'm fine now, there's always this, oh, what if in the back of your head. And even you just realize that that was a decision that happened. And the day before, I thought I was completely fine. So, I always just kind of think, oh, this could happen to me and this could happen to me. And it meant that I did really push for things a lot harder. I realized I'm not going to waste my time. I'm going to do everything that I want to do, and I'm going to try and do it to the best of my ability. But then on the flip side, it meant that, I would choose to go on holiday instead of doing something else that I should focus on, or I just wouldn't really give myself time to relax, because I always thought that, tomorrow could be my last day type thing. So it did do a lot. It meant that I cut a lot of people out of my life that I didn't think were very good for me, or I realized, they weren't really there for me in this period, or I just didn't really like them. And I was like, well, why am I wasting my time kind of hanging around them? They didn't motivate me. They didn't bring anything to my life. It wasn't kind of the people I wanted to be surrounded by. So a lot of that was kind of impacted from it in a good sense. But then, as I said, in the bad sense, it meant that sometimes, you do need to take a breather, and it's not always hustle 24/7. You've got to sleep right. You've got to eat right. You've got to try and exercise. You got to try and do all these other things. And they are still important. You still got your responsibilities, still got to run that, but have a holiday every now and then, but not every 2 weeks.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and hope you don't mind me asking you about that period.
No, of course not.
And so at some point then you got around to starting 22 Impact. So what got you there? What made you decide to set up a talent and modeling management agency?
So it was actually off the back of a previous company that I had, and that had to shut due to Brexit and the pandemic. It just wasn't really viable. But in that business, we had done some work with influencers on the other side of it. So as a brand, approaching influencers. And just because I'd been in this space, I'd been within fashion for 6 years at that point. I went to my first fashion week around 2014 when I was 12. So I'd been in that space for a little while, and I'd built up a few connections. And one time it was one of my friends rang and basically just said, my manager is so awful. Can you help with these few things here and there? And I was like, okay, I'll help. I've just, kind of closed down that business, and it's a pandemic, so I'm not really doing too much. And I was looking for the next thing anyway. And so then I just kind of started helping her and her friend out with a couple of things. And then I was like, well, I'm quite good at this. I know how to do it. I know how the industry operates. I have so many contacts already from previous companies and just, spaces that I've been in. So let me just give it a go. I know how to set up companies, and know how to run them. So I just started it. We started with 22 influencers, and it was just a talent management agency. And then it grew from there.
And is that where the name 22 Impact comes from?
So 22 is my angel number, lucky number, whatever you want to call it. So also my birthday. So 22 has just always been a number for me. And then Impact, because we make an impact on both sides, on the talents' lives or the models' lives, and then also for the clients. So put the two together, and there you go.
Excellent. Great. So you started off with 22 influencers, and it obviously worked for you in terms of your lucky number from that. So what sort of things happened from there? What were some of the key milestones then between setting up in 2020 and 3 years later now? What were some of the key milestones?
I think a funny story that I always tell is we had a goal to work with a certain company within 2 years of launching. So it launched on the 22nd of May, theme goes. But launched on the 22nd of May, and within 2 years we wanted to work with this one specific company. The reason being because they don't really give out actual contracts to influencers that often. So when you do in the space that they were in, it's quite a good contract to get. by no means was it, a major conglomerate or anything like that, but it was just a goal at that time. And we actually signed 2 contracts with that brand on the 3rd day after launching. So on the 25th of May, we signed the 2 deals, and that was our 2-year goal. So at that point, I kind of was like, well, what am I meant to do now? Because that was the goal. So yeah, and to get back to your question, it was I guess it just snowballed. We keep moving the post further and further, and we just did things that made sense. But I think the key points would be that happening 3 days in. And then I think definitely the expansion of the bringing on the model division was a big one. So that happened last year or 2 years ago, November 2021, I think it was. So 2 years ago, the model division launch, that's been incredible. And then I guess since a lot of our headcount came on, I'd probably say that was about 9 months ago. That made a big difference. There's obviously been a lot of other things that have happened in that period of time, but those I think were the key things that stuck out.
So we've had a couple of things that have gone well. That the initial getting that brand that you were after very quickly. Can you think back and think, what were some of the low points when things were a bit tough? Must have been some of those. We all had those. So what might they have been?
There are definitely months, and I guess in this industry it fluctuates unbelievably. So you can have a month which is so great, and the next month can be pretty much nothing. So for cash flow reasons, for just general startup problems, the stability is very hard. And so there were a couple of months when I'd be in them and think, we've got next to no work coming in, or we don't really have much that's going on. And it's part of the industry, and then it's also part of being a startup. So then you have to look and go, okay, well, what can we do to get to the root of this? Is there a problem? Is there something that needs sorting? Is it something that's out of our control? What is it? And kind of take it from there. And you'll always find improvements in doing those things, and little sessions. But that was definitely a worry at some times. I think the other thing as well is it was hard because we launched really without a unique selling point in a way. We didn't really go after a certain market or certain types of people, because it happened very naturally too. So I think that was definitely something that if I was to redo it again, I would kind of sort that out a lot earlier and define, okay, who exactly are we going after? What are the types of people we want to bring on? What are the types of clients we want to work with? All those types of things. We didn't really do that at the start. And, I guess you would do if you had a business plan, but we didn't really roll with a business plan at the time. It was just, we've been thrown into it. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, very good. So we've and what sort of things, you mentioned the stability there, what sort of things have you done to try and build some stability into the business?
Definitely recurring jobs is a big thing. So you can, there's a lot of one-off contracts in this industry, but those recurring jobs, if you know that you've got kind of a minimum recurring revenue going on, then, okay, I know that every month I've at least got this coming in. Anything on top of that is a bonus, so it's great. But okay, this is what needs to cover staff, this is what needs to cover subscription costs or running costs, whatever it is, that baseline kind of needs to do that helped a lot. And kind of then, we shifted our aim into trying to get those recurring revenue contracts as opposed to the one-off situations. Okay. The other one was just our diversification of our divisions, I guess. We started off just as talent management, and then we moved into model management. That obviously adds a whole nother stream of income. And even within companies themselves, if anyone listening has has a company or has a business, there will be other ways within your company that you can bring in additional revenue outside of the services that you already offer. You can offer consulting, or you can, there's different ways in which you can expand what you already do and just add a layer kind of on top of that, which you're still familiar with. So I think, yeah, definitely diversifying those kind of our offering was great. Yeah, I would say those were kind of the main points when we were in those low points of, okay, how do we bring in more revenue?
Very good.
And I guess just do a deep dive.
Yeah. So what do you? It's obviously an industry that you're passionate about. What is it that you love most about what you do?
I'm a big traveler myself. I love traveling. I love flying. I love being in new places. I love being on the go. So I think this job is very intense. That's what I love. I thrive off pressure and stress, weirdly. So yeah, I think the travel aspect of it is great. And I just think the fact that no day is ever the same, I never have the same campaign. I'm never working. Really, it's different clients every day. I make an impact on people's lives as well. A model signs a deal that they've wanted to work with for ages for a brand or whoever it is. You actually make an impact and you get to create content. You get to meet people. I love working with creatives. They're some of the best people to ever exist. So working with videographers and photographers and makeup artists and hairstylists and all those different types of people, they're all great. Yeah, and it's just it's a lovely space to be in, and across all the divisions you get a lot of different experiences and a lot of different people, which I think keeps me going.
So what, on the flip side of that then, what frustrates you? What drives you mad? What would you, if you had a magic wand, what would you change?
Late payments is what I would right. Late payments, especially in this industry. Talent and model industry have they're notoriously known for late payments. Right. And so I know there are a few companies trying to tackle this, and there's some initiations that I've seen which look really promising. But on the whole, it is a very, very big issue. So I think that would be great if we as an industry could come together and fix that. What else would I think sometimes the times can be a big issue. That sometimes there is, especially in those last 3-4 months of the year, it is pure chaos, and it's not a nice pressure. It's not a nice stress. It is just 24/7 chaos, especially because we work in different locations around the world. You throw time zones into it, and then you throw in the fact that I also am not in the same time zones myself. It can get very stressful very quickly and a little bit chaotic. But yeah, aside from that, I can't complain. It's a great job.
Brilliant. Sounds great. So what's the legacy that you want to leave? I mean, you're still a young guy. What is the impact, the legacy that you want to leave?
I think that this is also one of many companies that we kind of want to form and have a group, but I would really like in this specific company to not just help people how we do right now, but also develop different initiatives and softwares that actually tackle some of the roots that are in the industry. I think that's what the next phase of what we're doing now is. Okay, we notice these problems quite vast, and they really need to be addressed, and no one's kind of really doing anything about it. So I would like to bring in some things and also just a lot more education on the whole, educating creators, educating models, educating others who want to get into the space, and just sharing kind of how it's done, what's happening, and give people support when they need it, because it can get quite lonely in these industries as being on the other side of it. So I think that's something really nice to be able to support, and especially within the modeling, the industry has changed drastically within the past 5-10 years alone on how people view bodies and how they view models and what impact that has on marketing, and how as a society, you know, we shouldn't be pushing ideal stereotypes and all those types of things. So it's really nice to be able to be in that conversation, and I hope that we can try and lead a little bit more in the development of that as it goes on.
Very good. Excellent. So you mentioned that you're on the sort of next phase of scaling. So what does the next year hold? What does good look like for you in the next year?
There's a lot. But I think we do want to increase some of our staff. There's still some gaps that are missing. I'd love to create a little bit more of a team. That would be great. Definitely those divisions that I said we hadn't really focused on too much, the PR, events, and brand marketing, those are definitely going to be expanded. And I think just overall increasing the amount of clients we work with, the amount of jobs we're able to get for those that we represent, and just generally more opportunities all around. I think there's going to be a lot more consistency in this next phase as well, which is a lovely word to hear as a startup. There's not too much consistency. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot more consistency happening, you know, with staff. We've got some really good softwares in place, and some really good people that we've partnered up with. So I think yeah, it should be a good next year.
Good. And what, if anything, do you see as your big challenges then over the next year? What might give you some problems, give you some issues?
I think the challenge is more going to come on a personal part in terms of, well, leadership, especially, is, you know, it goes into a point where I probably in the next year will be completely removed from a lot of the day-to-day activities, and it becomes, you know, just overseeing, and giving up that control is quite hard. So I think that's going to be a challenge with me of, okay, how do I effectively lead this team, and also grow this team, kind of enter that next stage where, you know, we're not quite in a fully fledged business, but we're also not a startup anymore. We're in that kind of awkward zone. So I think kind of pushing through into that next stage of you know, a quite recognized company is where we're heading.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So finding ways that you can improve your leadership from the point of view of stepping out from the day-to-day, at the same time developing other leaders within the business to be able to grow. And also cementing kind of our place with, as I said, we didn't really go into this company with a specific proposition. So I think that's been part of this next phase, is okay, honing in on who is, you know, the ideal client, the ideal talent, and how do we enter these spaces that we haven't yet entered, is where we're at. Very good. Fascinating insights into a world that I have to say I know very little about. So thank you very much for that. That's been really good. Thank you for your time today. Are you all right for a couple of quick fire questions before we wrap?
Go for it.
So if you could go back to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
Chill out. Chill out. Yeah, I haven't stopped for a while. Chill out.
Brilliant. Good. I don't know if you're a reader or a podcast, but how do you get your learning? How do you develop yourself? What sort of resources?
Definitely books. I'm staring at 4 different bookshelves right now.
Okay.
I'm a big book person. YouTube is phenomenal. TikTok also phenomenal for a lot of things. And I love a podcast as well. I love a podcast. So
any particular books or podcasts that you'd like to highlight?
80-20 Principle is incredible. Psychology of Money is excellent. Laws of Power. I also really like, I think it's called something called like Blue Whale Strategy or something.
Blue Ocean
Strategy. There we go. Blue Ocean Strategy. Yeah. That's a great book as well. I really enjoyed that. Then you've got your classics, Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, and 4 Hour Work Week as well. Yeah, they're my favorites. Brilliant. But definitely, I think 80-20 Principle and Psychology of Money top on the list.
Very good. And do you read them? Do you listen to them as audiobooks? How do you find that? And how do
generally
you find the time?
Both at the same time. It's psychologically, I love psychology as well, but it does help a lot with retaining the information. So I generally will have the book in front of me. I don't like Kindles. I'm a hardback guy. So
Yes.
I have the book in front of me. I've got a highlighter and I have it playing in my ear at the same time.
Right.
And I'll highlight through. And then generally I'll go after the book and I'll write notes on everything that I've kind of highlighted and do a bit of a deep dive into it as well. That's the way that works for me. But I know some people can have Kindles that connect up to different softwares that kind of do all that automatically as well.
Yeah, very good, excellent. So, what apps have you got on your phone? What do you make the most use of from apps or bits of technology, maybe?
I mean, I also have two different phones, so one's for work, one's for business. So I guess they're a little bit different, but on a day-to-day, I'm always using Slack. WhatsApp is my Bible. And yeah, I guess that's pretty. It's not too exciting, my phone, really, just some social media stuff.
Yeah, that's good. So who would you say has had the most influence on you as a leader?
So I have a mentor who used to be quite high up at Gymshark. He's been incredible for me as a mentor. Also, my mom is also in business. She's also helped with some good advice over the years here and there. And I think at the time, and still now, Ben Francis, so he's the owner of Gymshark as well. Yeah. And I think he was the first person that was younger and successful that I could look up to quite a lot. Everyone else, is kind of in a different bracket. And I learned once you start comparing and things to them a lot, it can get a bit out of hand. But definitely, Ben. Yeah.
He's done all right for himself.
Yeah, Ben's done all right.
Haven't they recently had an investment that valued the business at over $1 billion?
Yeah, 1.5, I think it was out in September. So he's doing okay. But yeah, I think I take it pretty much everywhere. I don't think I have specific people that I fangirl over or anything, but I like to collate a lot of information from a lot of different places. So
very good. Yeah. And what's your most successful way of finding new customers? What works for you?
Good question. Well, maybe not the best person to answer this because we haven't actually put a penny into advertising or marketing for ourselves right now. So a lot of our new customers come just inbound direct from word of mouth or from outreach. So we previously did a lot of email outreach and personal outreach to people, but a lot of it is just very organic, which thankfully is amazing. And as part of our next scaling phase in August, that is what we're going into our regular email outreach, our regular marketing. But yeah, don't underestimate the power of organic and just post on your socials and doing email outreach.
Building your reputation and your credibility within your market. Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Absolutely fascinating. How can people get hold of you if they want to talk to you or find out more about 22 Impact? What's the best way for them to do that?
They can visit the website anytime. It's numbers22impact.com. Or they can email me, which is freedom@22impact.com. I do have Instagram. It's Freedom's Feed is the handle, although I'm not on it right now, but it is there. They're probably the main places. And yeah, Instagram for the company is 22 Impact as well.
Excellent. Freedom, thank you very much indeed for being my guest on ScaleUp Radio today.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been a pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion. And if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial ScaleUp System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favourite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.